2/5 of this Igeres HaKodesh are like troubleshooting. He goes through a pilpul, and when he finishes, he answers questions, and the end is very difficult. We're on Daf Kuf Nun Hey Amid Beis V'Hinei B'Makamacha. Okay. Yesterday we learned about tefillah, but it wasn't an ordinary tefillah. It was a tefillah b'chol ma'adecha, and a tefillah b'chol ma'adecha is mevarer birurim without any involvement in gashmis. That's number one. And number two, the Ein Sof is nimshach straight from Ein Sof into Biyah. It doesn't stop in Atzilus, and that's why it's Meshana Derech HaTeva. It makes nisim and influence. Finish with tefillah, no more davening. Now it's going to be mitzvahs. And when he talks about mitzvahs, most of what he's going to talk about is going to end up being birurim. But actually he's going to say three things about mitzvahs. The middle one is going to be the inyan of birurim, and this is going to be the, so to speak, the focal point, according to the Tanya Yiddish, of this Igeres HaKodesh. So now we're going to be discussing mitzvahs, the idea of doing mitzvahs physically. One of the interesting things about this Igeres HaKodesh is that he's going to package together mitzvahs maisius with limud halachas of mitzvahs maisius, and even with limud the side of the halachas of mitzvahs maisius. When you do a mitzvah maisius, or you learn the halacha of a mitzvah maisius, or you learn the kabbalah of a mitzvah maisius, everything we're about to say, that it makes yichudim and lamayla, that it's mavara birurim, that it's mamshach the atmas of atzilas lamata, is true. If you're learning other inyanim of Torah, like you're learning what's called the idea of say the shtalshalos, or you're learning halachas that are loy shchichi, that are not current or never happened, in other words, it's not halacha lamaisa, then it doesn't have that maila. Dafka, when you're learning Torah, liba de hilchasa, and he's going to say chavaldik kinekuda. When you learn Torah, it has halacha liba de hilchasa, or sight, it's the same as mitzvahs. A, in terms of being biyachid yichudim, B, in terms of being vada birurim, and C, in terms of atzilus itself being nimshach lamata. This third point is going to be the contentious one at the end, the last blot and a half, from the top of Kuf Nun Ches till the end of Kuf Nun Tes. The Rebbe is going to be mafalpol about how Torah, which is in avodah ruchnius, could be nimshach matzilas lamata without any shini whatsoever. So again, we're going to be now discussing mitzvahs. We're going to have 3 points about the mile of mitzvahs. Number 1, yichudim, which is in atzilus. Number 2, birurim. And number 3, that when you do a mitzvah, you mamshach the atmas of elokus lamata. And let's begin. In other places it's written about mitzvahs. In some places it says, and the 248 positive mitzvahs are hechasadim, and the 365 negative mitzvahs are in the hegevuras and so forth. What he means to say is like this. At the end of yesterday's shir, he said that mitzvahs are in the Eir Ampin. So now he's in effect asking a kasha l'chayr, the mitzvahs not in the Eir Ampin, they're hechasadim and hegevuras. And it's mashma from later. You know what the word mashma means? It's not for sure, but it's mashma from later that hechasadim and hegevuras are moichin or chabad. So you're asking a kasha. We said at the end of yesterday's shir that the mitzvahs are in Zeir Ampin, and now we're saying it's Hegevur and Hegevurus. And he compounds the kash. And in the third place of God it's written, that the mitzvahs are the 613 pathways in the skull. That are which comes from the one pathway, which is the whiteness of the skull. We had this in Igeres HaKodesh Simon Chavtes, when he talked about halachas. And he explained to us that you have a skull. The skull has hair. The hair are called shaidas. The shayras hamechin stimoin, they're chabad of keser. The whiteness of the skull itself is called orchin. Like if you could imagine the hair being a forest of trees, magnify a person's head by 1,000,000. So every hair becomes a tree, and there's pathways between the trees. That's called orchin. The whiteness of the skull itself. In the Lashon HaKabbalah, Teira comes from chachma stimo, the chachma of keser, and mitzvahs come from keser shebe keser, gulgalta, ratz. So he says 3 things, which are mitzvahs, the Eir Ampin, Hechsav Negevuras, which is Mashma Tzmoichin, or Kes. And he answers the kasha very poshut by bringing you the first of the 3 nekudas we're going to have about mitzvahs. Ach in the Tetz Zazeh, Shekala mitzvahs, all the idea of mitzvahs is a saken and amach evidei zah, is to fix the 248 limbs of zah. The Eivishter made kelim of zah. And when a Yid said does mitzvahs, he fixes the amach evim of zah. What does that mean, he fixes? There's nothing broken about them. Atzilos ain't broke. He expands, like he said, you expand the kelim, you add more pratim to the kelim, so that oil is nimshach in greater amounts from higher, and the oil is nimshach in greater pnimius. He says, by bringing down the infinite light of the Eibishter, first of all, b'maychin, into the brains of Atzilus, the Chabad of Atzilus. Haklulim, here you see what I told you. That Moichin are generally divided into Hechasadim and Hegevuras. And the source of the Hamshach in Meichin, Hu Lavnunas V'chuli, is the whiteness of the skull. Hu Ha'enig V'chayfetz Elyon, it's the pleasure and the supernal desire. Lahamshach Lamata, to bring the light down here into Atzilus. So basically he's saying that the Shadish of Mitzvah Taka, the Archan of Golgalta. Kesef Shebekesef. Then it comes into Hegvarim Nechsadim, which is Chabad. Then it comes into the Midas of Atzilus to fix Atzilus. Now, so which fixes Atzilus? The expansion of the Caleb brings down more light, or bringing down more light affects the expansion of the Caleb. If you look at the Lashon inside, it sounds over here, the light expands the Caleb. So I don't know the Havana. Is this different than normal? Normal Askan Reza Shmei is you do more mitzvahs begashmis. You expand the Kalim of Atzilus, because you can't reach the Eid of Atzilus, and it's Mamshech more oir. Here he's saying the same bottom line, but forget, you're Mamshech more oir, you understand what I'm saying? So the Kalim expands. You understand what I just said? Usually in Chassidus you expand the Kalim. Here he's saying forget. So I don't know. But the bottom line is this answers the kasha. Where are mitzvahs from? They start out in Kesed, and they come down into Zohar. This is called Yichudim. To be Mamshach more Lakus and Atzilus through Yichudim. Says the Rebbe like this. So it's Lahamshach Elamat Lamach Evrim de Zohar. You bring the light down below to the Evrim of Zohar. U'mischalekas Hamshacha, and the Hamshacha is split up. L'tayag Hamshachas Pratis is 630 individual Hamshachas. L'fi Bechinas Erech HaMitzvahs, according to the measure of the value of the mitzvahs. In other words, each mitzvah is a different keli, and the performance that mitzvah brings down the oil into that particular keli. Sach HaKoil, all the mitzvahs together are expanding and bringing more oil into all of the kelim of Atzilus. For example, Kigain, for example, B'tzaka v'gamach, where you do justice and kindness. Nimshach and Insei Baruch Hu, you bring down Invlad Eibishter, L'chitzaydias HaKeli de Chesed de Zah, to the periphery of the vessel of Chesed of Zah. Ubekir Madinin, when you do the judgments, in other words, a Bezdin, a Sanhedrin that has to judge. B'chitzaydias Gevura, the Chitzaydias of Gevura. Now I want to clarify what this means. The Chiddush of mitzvahs is that it affects not just Pnimiyas HaKelim, but it affects also Chitzaydias HaKelim. Pnimiyas HaKelim are very close to the Oyer, and that's the Oisias of Torah. Chitzaydias HaKelim is further from the Oyer, and that's the place where mitzvahs are. When you do mitzvahs, you're not only bringing the oil into Pnimiyas HaKelim, which is called Iyah V'chayei Echad, Iyah V'gamei, you also bring oil into the Chitzaydias HaKelim as well. What you're going to have to know is, I'm going to tell it to you in the next couple of shiurim, that as it turns out, there's actually 4 madregas. I might as well tell it to you now. There's Pnimiyas of Pnimiyas HaKelim, there's Chitzaydias of Pnimiyas HaKelim, then there's Pnimiyas of Chitzaydias HaKelim, then the Chitzaydias of Chitzaydias HaKelim. Pnimiyas of Pnimiyas HaKelim, I think, yes, 2 minutes, is Oisias HaTeira. And Teira's ACS are one with the aid of Teira, Mamish. It's a Dvekas Nikeres, it's called Gavin Hoy. Mitzvahs are Chitzaynias of Pnimiyas HaKelim. So they have 2 milas. The mile of Pnimiyas HaKelim is that the Dvekas and Eretz Alakus. But it's Chitzaynias, it's a Metzias B'fnei Atzmei. Mitzvahs have a mile of being a Atzmei, a Metzias B'fnei Atzmei. Which is part of the reason mitzvahs can come down into Asiyah without any shini from Atzilus, because they're not oyer, they're kli. Nishamas Yisrael come from Pnimiyas of Chitzaynias HaKelim. Because on the one hand we're godliness, on the other hand we're totally separate. Totally separate is Chitzaynias HaKelim. So Azei Chaptis, Pnimiyas of Chitzaynias HaKelim. And the world, and in this Tanya he's going to speak specifically about Malachim, they come from Chitzaynias of Chitzaynias HaKelim, so when they come Lamata there's a Hel and Behest. The other Machitzin, including Malach. So he says mitzvahs affect the Kelim depending on which mitzvah you performed. So the Alter Rebbe, V'derech u'mayver hamshacha. And this flow of life from Kesed to Hegvuras and Echasadim to Zah passes through B'derech mayver ho'adei Pnimiyas HaKelim, the inner dimension of the Kelim. U'moicheseyim, and the brains, the mind of the Kelim. Shehein, which are the Chilu, the Chimu, Sichli, and Metivim, which is the Yid and the Ava, which is either intellectual or natural. Okay? Shehein Bechinas, that these 2 levels of the Chilu, the Chimu, Sichli, and the Chilu, the Chimu, Tivim are Meichen, the Katnas of the Gadlus. There's small Meichen and large Meichen. So he's trying to explain the 3 steps. You do mitzvahs. You bring down Chitzaynias HaKelim of Zoh. This is called Ramach Evrim de Zoh. But they pass by the Pnimiyas HaKelim of Zoh. The Pnimiyas HaKelim of Zoh are the Meichen of Zoh that are called the Hegevarim and the Hechasadim and the Hegevuras, which explains the same point he mentioned before. Ad Kan Inyan Nekuda Rishayna. This Nekuda says that mitzvahs brings down more godliness from Ein Sof and Atzilus. There was no mention of Klippa, there was no mention of Birurim, and there was no mention of Tachtainim. Only in Atzilus. This is the classic Kabbalistic concept of Yichudim, or whatever they call it, whatever word they use. He didn't mention that. He just spoke what Taisa said in Atzilus. Now comes point 2. But it starts in mid-sentence, so it drives you crazy. Point 2 is going to be now the Inyan of Avedas HaBirurim. That when we do mitzvahs ma'asiyos, when we're vara gashmias, and we're mamshach alakus, not only into Atzilus, but into Biyah as well. Dr. Vait. And this is the reason that Bikesh Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom miyet. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted very much. L'kayim ha-mitzvahs ma'asiyos, do the practical mitzvahs. Hatluyas ba'aretz, which are connected to Eretz Yisrael. Shehein, because they practical mitzvahs are tachlis ha'ishtalshalus, the ultimate purpose of the whole ishtalshalus. Lahamshach Ein Sof Baruch Hu, to bring down the infinite light of the Eibishter. And here's the key word: levare zu machen klar, to bring clarity into entanglement and confusion of hakelim de zeirampin de biyah. Because in Atzilus there's no need to mavara, everything is perfect. So now he mentions the idea when we do mitzvahs, we're being mavara the kelim abiyah, and of course the first thing we mavara is the physical thing which with the mitzvahs are being performed. Shabahen, hey, that in them you have harapachni tutzim, the 248 sparks that Kabbalah speaks about, and these sparks are released al yedei Teiru mitzvahs maisiyas shebebiyah dafke, through Teira and mitzvahs maisiyas which are dafke in Bria, Yetzira, and Asiyas. This is the second point. When we do Teira mitzvahs, we'll also mavara birurim, and you'll see later on that our birurim don't simply bring down the light of Atzilus in the lower worlds, but our birurim affect a revelation of Sag, of Kesed. When you lift up the sparks are higher than Atzilus. So the second point brings down the light of Kesed, even higher light, into Atzilus, of Atzilus into the lower worlds.